Hi boys and girls, it's Show back with another video. This evening we're obviously reacting to the Manchester United versus Liverpool game at Old Trafford. 5-0 it finished to the away team. I think it was like the biggest defeat at Old Trafford since, or for United at home since I think something like 1936 or something I heard. And yeah, it was certainly a sobering defeat. For any Man United fans out there, how to unpack this really, it's difficult for me at this moment. I've kind of talked about this subject in terms of Solskjaer tactics. I've exhausted it over the last week or so, and obviously it reared its ugly head again. But I think this is undoubtedly the sort of final nail in the coffin when it comes to Solskjaer's managerial tenure at the club. Now, obviously, he's a club legend. He'll remain a legend for what he's done as a player. And through periods of his management, in terms of the progression of sort of building the squad and bringing at least a bit of joy and positivity in terms of the way he handles the media and that kind of feel-good factor. I mean, there's certainly things that he can be proud of as Man United manager. But at the same time, obviously, this sobering defeat certainly must take the cake as his darkest day ever Man United player or manager. But yeah, if we sort of just look at the game as a whole, it was one side that has an identity. It's had an identity for a few years now. Has a lot of talent, but you wouldn't say it was drastically more talent than United on paper, bar the fact that Salah on form is the world's best player at the moment. But a team with a plan and a team that has an identity where the midfield, for example, in particular, there are a bunch of workhorses that bring the best out of the attacking line. As well as the defensive line in terms of Alexander-Arnold and Robertson's attacking threats as well, and the way they obviously like to bombard forward. So from a United perspective, as a team with no plan, a kind of mixed-matched halfway house identity, which has become more and more fractured with the signing of Ronaldo, which I think has heaped more and more pressure on Solskjaer to be a bit more expansive with his tactics, ironically, and to try and veer away from the McFred partnership in midfield, which he did. Partly it was enforced because of McTominay's injury early on in the season, but I do think, as I've said in previous videos before, McFred isn't the problem. It's the manager that's the problem. As in, a better manager would be able to either get more out of them as a partnership, but yeah, knowing their limitations, would drop them and have a partnership in midfield, whether it's a Matic or a Pogba, whether Van der Beek gets more game time, would have a plan in terms of how to utilise his midfield more effectively across other areas where United are talented. And you can't deny that Solskjaer's fallen incredibly short there. He went back to type with McTominay and Fred. We saw how they performed midweek. And again, just to reiterate, it's not the. It'll be easy to sit here and blame the defence. Blame some individual mistakes that happen in those goals. And yeah, a certain percentage of responsibility does fall at their door. That is absolutely the case. And I would be a hypocrite or some kind of naysayer to say otherwise, really, in relation to that. But one thing is clear, and I must emphasise this, is that it's not as simple as a Maguire and Shaw mix-up at the back and things like that. This player failing to clear his lines or what have you, or a player going an attack and run, maybe not get back as quick. There's a defensive structure which starts from the top and builds from the top going down to the middle. It's that age-old cliche of you attack as a team, you defend as a team. and we certainly don't do that. We attack and defend as individuals. Every player is on an island, and this hasn't been addressed. It was at its worst against Leicester City. We'd ridden our luck up until that Leicester City game because of, let's be frank here, David De Gea's been in top form, and he's been excellent this season. And some of his saves, I mean, two of them are pretty straightforward, but the one off Alexander-Arnold was world class again. It was the same as that Tielemans save. It was unbelievable. And for the large part, he's been proactive off his line. He's been communicating, and he's quite simply not been the problem. And it's very much a repeat of obviously when he was the Sir Matt Busby Player of the Year. I think it was at 4 times, which was a record for the club, and it was because we were poor in other areas, other departments, and it exposed us. And he was obviously the one bright light, and it seems to be repeating itself now, which is frightening to think that we've gone full circle where you thought we'd sort of maybe left that disappointment behind and really sort of maybe written a new chapter in the club, one where we're approaching trophies or approaching more. Well, I say more, I mean the first time a title challenge and then consistent title challenges, but that's not been the case. And it's, like I say, it's not down to just defence. It's because I mentioned the Bastian Schweinsteiger thing as my kind of just example, because I know if you want to think of a game specifically, and you can go back and watch the highlights of that, when we played Arsenal under Louis van Gaal, and we lost, we conceded 3 goals in the first 15 minutes, and you had Schweinsteiger pressing out of midfield, a bit like Bruno. It was very, very similar. Bruno will just press out of midfield at just the wrong time, and you didn't know whether it was manager tactics, and you can hear from the post-match interviews that it is manager tactics, because he says, we want to get on the front foot, we want to press, we want to impose ourselves, we're at home, we're Man United, we do what we want. Yeah, that's true, right? I can do what I want. I can do what I want with my life. I could sit here, I could get this beer here, and I could pour it, all over my computer if I wanted to. Is that the right thing to do? Absolutely not. So why is he doing it? We're pressing when we don't have the personnel to press. If you want to press, you have Cavani up front, or you play Greenwood down the middle, and you have Sancho and Rashford, and you have runners. And then if you press, you make sure that your defensive line is higher up, and you make sure your double pivot is higher up. You don't have it so 1 or 2 players press, they jump the opposition at just the wrong time, arguably, but they jump them, they make that commitment, and then they bypass with a couple of passes, and then your team in midfield to defence is 20 metres further back, and there's gaps everywhere. And you have talent like Alexander-Arnold and Robertson on the ball, where they can, and Henderson's pass for that 5th goal, for example, where they have the freedom just to pick out whatever they want, with on-field runners of the talent of Mo Salah. It's absolutely diabolical. It's absolutely criminal. It's very much schoolboy. It's schoolboy football, Sunday, like garbage pub team Sunday league football that I sometimes play on occasion. Where there's just, like I say, there's no cohesion. It's players like, for example, you saw the way Maguire and Shaw played last season as a partnership and how they're struggling now. And like I said, it's being exposed by those gaps in midfield. I mentioned about Wan-Bissaka and Shaw pushing on, how they shouldn't, because of, again, the gaps that are forming from our lack of structure. We saw Wan-Bissaka, and Greenwood at fault for that first goal. Inexplicable press on the right-hand side. But when they did press, there wasn't a kind of an understanding of where the others needed to be. They bypassed that press. They get in behind it. And then what happens is Lindelof and Maguire, one of them thinks, okay, well, we're exposed here. So instead of maybe sinking back deeper and deeper and maybe just sort of covering your box and try and maybe accept a shot from the edge of the box, they think, I'll engage. I'll engage as well. And you got to remember, you're playing Liverpool. You're playing a team that has been one of the you'd say the 3-4 standout teams over the last 4 or 5 seasons. Been the top 2 teams in the league, Premier League, out of English clubs over the last 5 seasons. That has a largely unchanged team in terms and a manager and an identity that has largely been unchanged over that period of time. And you think you can do that? Absolute joke. just a deluded. Like it's so deluded, and the United fans out there as well that thought Ronaldo was going to be our saviour. Like I said, I know that there's people out there, I've heard other videos and stuff like where it's not Ronaldo's fault, and obviously it's not. It's the manager's fault. The blame's mainly at the managerial staff's door, and they seem to manage it. They seem to manage it by committee. There doesn't seem to be anyone that's a real authority figure there. Lack of real leadership there. But yeah, just to sum up in relation to that Ronaldo thing, it's just like I mentioned playing Cavani, playing Greenwood down the middle. Now you can play Ronaldo. You can play Ronaldo. You could play Ronaldo and Cavani, but you have to have a plan. If you're going to play those two together up front, or you're going to play Ronaldo and you're going to accept the liability which he is in terms of what he does off the ball, even on the ball. He often holds onto the ball for too long, will get bullied out of it. Like I said, just very much just a moments player now at the age that he is, and the reality is at this top league, at this top level, he should be a player that you utilise off the bench. But if you're going to play him, then you need to have a structure around him that's going to allow him to succeed or allow your team to succeed in games. And the way to do that, and I'm afraid this is the case, and this is the way Solskjaer was playing last season, and I don't understand why we've moved so drastically away from it, is you play Fred and McTominay maybe as you pivot. That worked last season in big games. And then you sit deep. You have two banks of four, or a bank of four and a bank of three, and you hit them on the counter attack. And you use the pace of Rashford, you use the pace of Greenwood, of Sancho, of other players, and you spring on the counter attack. And just because you have a chance with Bruno in the first 5 minutes of the game by going a bit gun-ho and you're pressing, doesn't mean that's the blueprint. And it reminds me a bit of like the naivety of when Man United played Barcelona for the first time in the final in 2009, after we won in Moscow. And obviously we felt like the best team in the world at that point, and we felt that they weren't an unknown quantity, Barcelona, but they were like, they needed to make that next step to jump to elite team. And we went after them in the first 10 minutes, and we had lots of chances, and they kind of rode that storm. Now, great, if we'd scored in those first 10 minutes, then maybe the game would have been different, but I beg to differ. I don't think it would have been. And after 10 minutes, Barcelona rode it, and then their possession game went into full gear, and we got, largely played off the park. And Fergie didn't learn from it. In the final, he tried to put on a spectacle again against Wembley in 2011, and the same kind of thing happened. We were 1-1 at half time, yeah, great, but we knew we were second best in that game, and we knew we were just playing off moments. And in that game, the defence played pretty well, but we were getting exposed by just the passing triangles of Barcelona's midfield. And in this game, the separation, the disjoint between midfield, defence, and attack means that the defence is getting exposed a lot. And like I say, it makes it look a lot worse than it is from the defensive perspective, but really it comes from the way the team's been put out, the way that, are they being told to sit deep, or are they being told to press? At the moment, we're in a halfway house. Fred and McTominay are deep. Some of the attackers are pressing, and we are all over the place. So, quite simply, Solskjaer's got to go. He's had the Leicester game. It was bad before the Leicester game, but he had the Atalanta game. To come out and say that the Atalanta game was a good game, that they played well, I thought I'd stick with this team, they're like riding some kind of positive wave. Utter nonsense. We were terrible in that game against a team that had 5 of their key players out, that had a centre-back who was playing largely very well in that game up until a point, get injured, and then come off. And that was when obviously the comeback started in the second half. To think that we can play the exact same way after the way we played against Leicester City is just it beggars belief. It beggars belief. Someone could earn good money and be at the top level of management doing something like that. And last thing I'll say on it in terms of who we could get now. I was going to mention in separate videos about who we could get as a manager, but just so you guys have an idea that I very much think someone like a Graham Potter, maybe like an heir apparent to like a Klopp, If you took him out of the Brighton team, you stuck him in the Bundesliga with a Mainz, with a Dortmund, he would do extremely well, and I think we'd think more of him. But obviously, this is desperate stuff now. We're not going to finish in the top four if we stick with it like this, and the way we're not seem to, learning from our mistakes with our balance problem in the team, and so the board's probably going to be forced to make a move here, where Potter's not available. So who do you go for? Now I've thought about this. That obviously Tuchel would have been a great manager for Man United, in terms of how when last season we played well against some big teams, we played five at the back. We played maybe Shaw as a left centre back. We'd play Telles more. Maybe by having that more protection, you'll get the best out of Pogba. You'd allow Van der Beek to play a bit more and have more game time. These are the things that could happen. And who's the other manager that plays a system with a back five that's available now? And I'm afraid it's Antonio Conte. So if we're not going to go after, like I say, take a punt at Potter, who I think would be unbelievable and step into this job at the right time, who has an identity and I think could be the next big thing in management. If that's obviously, it's come too soon now because of the calamity that we've had thus far, then I think based on the formation and stylistically what we could achieve at Man United, have a bit more defensive solidity, and the fact we know we have players that could play in a back five and maybe free up more of our attacking players, I think Conte is the man at this stage. But yeah, that'll do for the rant for now. All those United fans out there, cheers, sobering defeat, but chins up. We'll be back again, glory, glory, Man United, all that good stuff. But yeah, thanks a lot for listening. Please put your comments. What did you think of that game? Who would you have as the next manager? Who's mostly to blame? Is it the players? Is it the manager? And thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Ciao.